So are both Xavi Simons and Jorrel Hato about to become Chelsea players? They are the main focus once again of today's show. We've had some new updates regarding both Chelsea targets. In one case, potentially it being quite advanced, and also the potential of, in some ways, a swap deal that could make this more likely in Chelsea's favour. I also want to talk about Renato Veiga, who is on the verge of an exit from Stamford Bridge for probably an alright fee, and just a wild career trajectory from Veiga in the past 12 months that I haven't seen from many players. So we're going to dive into all of that today. Please do, as ever, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, how you're thinking, feeling. If you haven't checked out my content so far this week, please go and do so. Yesterday, uploading a predicted 11 for 25-26. We've been sort of casting our minds forward a little bit in a month's time for the start of the Premier League season and what Chelsea under Enzo Maresca with potential new signings may shape up to be. And I want to hear your thoughts about that in the comments below. So we spoke the other day about the first kind of strong links to RB Leipzig player Xavi Simons and the interest in him. Some of the thoughts from Chelsea fans that feel quite passionately he would be a very good signing and why he could be a good profile fit to what Enzo Maresca wants to do. It's progressed to a point now where, especially on the player side, the reporting seems to be quite consistent that the player is definitely open to making that move happen. Now, that doesn't mean it's a guarantee, and that doesn't mean it's about to happen, because, of course, there is another very important party within this, and that is RB Leipzig, who will want to drive the best fee. And we've seen this with Jamie Gittins. Just because Gittins had quite clearly made his intentions clear he wanted to move to Chelsea, the deal with Dortmund took a little bit of time to get over the line. But we've heard from the secret scout that, and someone who has been reliable before, I bring up this, I think that definitely in terms of his credentials of reporting transfer news, I specifically think about the Enzo Fernandez to Chelsea deal, him being quite integral in reporting that kind of first, really. He believes that Simons will become a Chelsea player. That is very strong. I haven't heard that from anywhere else, but Florian Plettenberg, who reported this story originally, one of the first people I saw reported it in terms of Simons to Chelsea, believes that the deal is getting closer. As revealed last night, a verbal agreement is near. Personal terms are not an issue, as he's open to the Chelsea project. Very good talks also took place with Leipzig yesterday, with more scheduled. Now RB are waiting for an offer. And as well, we move on to this, because this could be the thing that really opens up the door. And a swap deal. Chelsea under Bowley and Clearlake have been trying swap deals for many windows now. And arguably, unless I'm forgetting one, the one that comes to mind the most, I wouldn't call it successful because it really wasn't successful from a Chelsea point of view, is last summer where we saw Conor Gallagher go to Atletico Madrid, and effectively in a separate deal but almost simultaneously at the same time, Joao Felix came in the opposite direction when originally it was going to be Samu Omarodian. And maybe this is the thing that gets this deal over the line, because it's believed that Leipzig are pushing to sign Carney Chukwuemeka from Chelsea. They've opened talks for the midfielder. And of course, this is, it almost feels like simultaneously with Chelsea wanting to get Xavi Simons. Now, in the case of Carney Chukwuemeka, it seemed like a few weeks ago maybe he was going to remain at Borussia Dortmund. Already had a decent loan spell there in the Bundesliga, I think with a very good club. But maybe in some ways is being used as a makeweight, a sweetener really in this deal for a player that Chelsea want to sell. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Carney Chukwuemeka. I don't think there's much point, discussing his career at Chelsea at this point, because it just seems like it's ended at this, there's no way back for him. And especially when you're signing players like Xavi Simons, when you sign players like Joao Pedro, when you continue to sign players in a position that maybe Carney could have thrived in, it seems like he will be making his move elsewhere. And I think Leipzig, Dortmund would be a good place for him. I still am, just personally detached from Chelsea. I think Carney Chukwuemeka will prove to be a very, very good midfielder, and may also take the route of a Jamie Gittins, a Jadon Sancho, English players who've, had to go abroad to make their name, to very much elevate their status after struggling to kind of get into a big club in England, and then maybe one day returns to the Premier League. That may even be with Chelsea. You never know what the future could hold. But I think this is where you can see this still coming to fruition. Now, it has been reported by The Independent, I believe this story was, that Bayern Munich have now entered the race to sign Simons as well. But sources close to the player still indicate that Simons and, Leipzig themselves are in talks with Chelsea. So, one to watch. I mean, if Bayern come in for a player, that is quite serious. At times Chelsea have fallen behind in that aspect. I think like last summer we saw Michael Elise ended up going to Bayern Munich once they came in for him, and Raptors did up pretty quickly. But, one to look out for. And just gauging my comments on the show the other day, I get the sense that most of you are positive about Xavi Simons. I think sometimes we discuss targets and there's conflicting feelings about them. I think this is one that's generally positive. And I think you understand why. I think it probably has been aided by the business already done this summer. I think that always helps things. And when you see Joao Pedro come in and impact the way he has, I think maybe there's a little bit more trust now in Chelsea's transfer dealings and who they're actually trying to profile and go after. But then also because of, as I say, the variations within Maresca's system, I think the need to have a higher quality and better depth around the squad when you want to be competing on multiple fronts, I think that is quite clear. So seems like one that's quickly moving, and when you add the Chukwuemeka thing into it as well, could be done quicker than the other funny enough Dutch name. There could be a Dutch double, a double Dutch within a couple of weeks for Chelsea, and that of course is Ajax defender Jorrel Hato. Now we've heard about Hato for a long period of time, but it's now believed that Chelsea advancing in discussions, as Ben Jacobs has reported, others as well. Fabrizio Romano, I believe, reports in Holland are also suggesting the same, that Chelsea now in talks with Ajax over the player, and once again personal terms not seeming to be a problem. Apparently the pre-window valuation, which was around I think 60 million, is expected to drop even though Hato is contracted until 2028. Connor Holden pointed out once again, Hato to Chelsea, some of the key stats around him that make him a good addition. Had a 76.7 dribbles tackle percentage last season, second amongst fullbacks in the top 6 leagues under 21. In terms of aerial duels, 1.70, 55% won, strong for someone playing at fullback, and 3.95 progressive passes per 90 with an 88% pass completion in the 99th percentile for pass completion amongst fullbacks. I've said this before, and funny enough, we're about to speak about Veiga, because Veiga in some ways, and Chilwell was, it's even like a wild thing. Someone brought it up. I think someone may have even commented on my show about this, or I might have just seen it on Twitter. That, if you're starting to use wing-backs again, you've got Ben Chilwell, but again, it's a bit like the Chukwuemeka situation. It's a bit like the Sterling situation. These are kind of far gone situations. They're not recoverable. So Chelsea then have to act. What I wouldn't want is you make your bed with Veiga, make your bed with Chilwell. Those players aren't coming back, but then you don't act to get a left back cover. Left back cover is one of those non-negotiable positions for me, how I'm judging this window. I'm not saying that the window hasn't been a success, can't be a success, and I won't see some positives. But, for me, if we come to the end of the window and we haven't got depth for Marco Correa, you're marking it down, or at least I'm marking it down. I don't think it's been a successful window if you haven't, because I just think in terms of like malpractice and like what when you're looking at a transfer window, you want to improve your first team, but also, are there any weak areas within the squad that you really need to prioritise? And I think Chelsea got away with it in the second half of last season. Cucurella was so durable because really there was no adequate left-back cover. And for a full season, when you've got Champions League football, that's something you have to keep on thinking in your mind compared to last season, is that Maresca had a lot of luxury, particularly in the Conference League, when you had those midweek Thursday to Sunday games, which were intense and got obviously more intense in the knockout stages. But even in the knockout stages, you look at some of the 11s he put out in the semi-final against Drew Gordon and Warsaw in the quarterfinal. These are nowhere close to the sort of 11s he'd had to field in a Europa League, especially in a Champions League latter stage. And of course, that puts stress on the squad. And that again is why when people say, where are all these players going to play? I think after the Club World Cup and the demands on these players, I think having a bigger squad is obviously of great benefit. So I think Hato would gain minutes and could be someone that also competes on multiple positions, because he also can play as a left centre back. So you could have Cucurella and Hato play in the same 11 potentially. I'm not sure how frequent that is because of Levi Colwill, but at least you have that opportunity. Now, Felix Johnson pointed out that Chelsea Academy player Samuel Smith, in terms of potentially being an academy left back that we promote into the first team, he is likely now going on loan to Strasbourg. And some people were saying, if you're buying Jorrel Hato, does it, impede Samuel Smith in terms of coming back to Chelsea and developing? And he sort of makes the point they are completely different profiles, and how Samuel Smith is more of an attack-minded left back, inverts into midfield, overlapping, kind of your more traditional left back, compared to Jorrel Hato, who of course a little bit more defensive minded. I do think that's intriguing though, and maybe a slight tweak in terms of recruitment, whether Hato could develop that in his game. Because as I mentioned in my show yesterday, we've seen parts of Maresca, especially during the Club World Cup, of moving Cucurella forward. Maybe you don't have that luxury of Jorrel Hato, but it's not like we don't have left attacking options who maybe could fulfill that role like a Jamie Gittin. So it's just something to think about, but maybe doesn't completely impede potential pathways in the future. But that, for me, that means that you still have to act. That doesn't mean you don't act in this transfer window. And I think Jorrel Hato seems to be the name Chelsea are pursuing. And as we talked about recently, go and watch a show recently. I'll link it up in the cards where we looked at some of his numbers in comparison to other potential targets that are similar in profile to Marc Cucurella. I think it makes a lot of sense and is clearly someone who is ready to make the next step in their career. So then we move on to Renato Veiga. And the only reason I wanted to point this out, I just find it absolutely mad what's happened with Renato Veiga over the past 12 months. All I can think about, he signed for Chelsea last summer, over a year ago now, for around 14-15 million. Comes in, looks like a decent rotational option, plays, scores in the Conference League, and I thought actually could prove to be, I believe on one of my prediction shows, I may have actually, and this is one of the worst predictions I made last year, I think my prediction was that he would kind of be a dark horse of the season, like an unexpected success of the season. And of course, he only lasted 5-6 months and then loans out to Juventus. Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? He definitely isn't coming back. Is he going out on loan somewhere else? And now it seems like he's ready to make a permanent move to Atletico Madrid, which basically means effectively in 12 months, he's gone from Basel to Chelsea to Juventus to Atletico Madrid. And all I could think about, and I tweeted this earlier, is this is the closest I think in real life you're going to get to the Alex Hunter journey on FIFA, where you jumped from like multiple European clubs. I mean, in terms of traveling, I'd love to see a Renato Veiga travel channel. I think that'd be incredible to see some of the sites he's got to see over the past 12 months. I just find it wild. The good thing is, I have to say, I think it does seem quite positive at the moment on the outgoings front. I think that is of some concern. That doesn't mean it's all sorted, but Veiga seems to be on the move. Felix seems to be on the move, at least from what we understand. It seems like that's developing with Benfica. That seems like a suitable move. Raheem Sterling, there was some chatter about a Champions League club being in for him. I still think Sterling is the most challenging move for Chelsea. You've still got to wrap up what's going on with Ben Chilwell, Axel Disasi. It kind of feels like those moves will be ones that don't happen till quite late in the window and won't be wrapped up. But at least Chelsea are gaining investment and gaining an ability to sell players. I mean, that is something that clearly needs to happen this summer, and it seems like some of those moves are also bringing in decent fees, which you've got to give the club credit for. If you have an unwanted player, a player that has no use, and you're able to gain even profit on him. I mean, that's one of the things with Renato Veiga that I think if we bought him for 14-15 million in today's current market and with what he's done over the past year, surely you're able to gain some profit on that. So it seems like Veiga is pushing to join Atletico, and that deal hopefully will come to fruition. And that will, of course, make way, you'd think, for Jorrel Hato. And Xavi Simons. I mean, Xavi Simons, I think, is the more exciting one, but I do actually think out of the two names, I think Hato is the more important. I think Hato is the more important one for the squad. That doesn't mean that Simons can't come in and become a big player for Chelsea. That's not the point I'm making. But, if I'm sitting here right now and going, in terms of depth area that I'm really concerned about, that's a weak area of the squad. Left back is the ultimate one, because you have no suitable left back cover. You have players who could play where Simons could play if that deal doesn't come to fruition. But I think it seems like at least it's moving in a positive direction, and Chelsea are very much jumping on that opportunity. So that is it for today's show. Last call really for any questions you want answered in my Q&A. I'm going to record it tomorrow. So any last questions you want to throw in, football related one, Premier League related ones, Chelsea related ones, film related ones, whatever, throw them down in the comments, and I'll add them to the Q&A, and you can email them sonofchelseaofficial@gmail.com, X @sonofchelsea, but probably if you're watching this, please do put them down in the YouTube comments below. So there we go for today's show. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're watching or listening to this, and I will see you again very, very soon. All the best.